So if they are burying their dead, maybe making a big cairn of rocks on top of the grave, and we're talking boulders that might weigh 500 pounds apiece, people are just not going to run into that. They're not going to find it. They would be really good at hiding it. So naturally, we're not going to have a body. So there's lots of reasons for not having a body. My name's Scott Taylor. I'm from Washington State. I'm a BFRO investigator. I've been doing investigations since 2006. I had my first sighting encounter, let's call it, in 2005. And that's what got me very enthusiastic about wanting to learn more and more about these creatures. That was my way of coping, was I got to know more. Something just happened to me where my whole world turned upside down. It's life altering, because you go through life thinking, everything's normal, and you're hunting in the woods and fishing and doing all those kind of things, and you never run into one of these creatures. So it's always, well, maybe could be there, maybe not. I just don't know. And then suddenly it happens. And now you're in nowhere. You don't have to believe in it anymore because you've experienced it. Well, my way of coping with that was to learn everything I could. The person that was with me when it happened, their way of coping was to just block it out and never went in the woods ever again after that. So that's how I got started in it. I was at lunchtime, I was looking at the websites that had, Bigfoot encounters and, all the BFRO website and all these others. There's lots of good stuff out there. And learning, some of these old stories, the story of Albert Ostman, being picked up in a sleeping bag and carried over a mountain and ends up finding himself with a family of Bigfoot in a place he doesn't know where he's at. The ape caves. One of my favorite stories is the Cowman of Copalis Crossing, because that's not too far from where I live and from where I had my first encounter. I was just sucking it all in. I was getting some books, starting to read books. Tom Powell's The Locals, great one to start with. And Dr. Meldrum's When Legends Meet Science, excellent textbook. Just starting to, get it all, figure out what am I dealing with. And then I saw that the BFRO had these expeditions that you could go on. And so I signed up and I went, and it's like I just met 40 new friends. And it was awesome. I met Mel Scahan, Bob Gimlin on that first one, teamed up with a guy who's a good friend now, John Ray, who does BFRO expeditions also. And we had a great time. We were like battle buddies. And we heard chatter behind our tents. We got really gutsy and we went out into the wilderness area away from camp, just the two of us, and slept right on the ground on a elk trail, just daring them to come in and poke us or something like that. They didn't do it, but we had a good time doing it. It was a great experience, and that got me then started with doing investigations. And to this point, I'm working on number 228 and 229. And that isn't a lot compared to some people. I was initially doing 2 or 3 a month. And then life changes. I got really busy with work, and it went down to like 1 a month and then maybe 1 a quarter. And I kind of just let it simmer for a while, and then after I retired, I've started to pick it back up again, and try to get 1 or 2 a month done. But you learn a lot by doing these report investigations. You relive the experience through the witness's eyes, You go there, you look for what evidence you can find. Oftentimes you don't expect to find anything, and you definitely are not going to see one. If you do, it's really a fluke. But you look for maybe footprints, you might look for stick structures, you might look for where are they sneaking up and watching the people in their houses. What are they doing? And you just start accumulating knowledge and data points, and pretty soon you're like putting the pieces of a puzzle together and figuring out what's going on. So, that's what I have been doing. I've seen 7 of them altogether. And that's not much compared to some people that are doing this. But I'm happy to have seen those 7. They were all fun. One was only 3 feet away, and he was playing games with us and scared the you-know-what out of everybody. And he probably got a good chuckle on that one, but it was fun. Initially, you're afraid of them because you don't know what they are, and they're really, really big. People just don't get how big they are. When they think of big, they think in terms of a big football player, like if you remember Refrigerator Perry, back from the 80s, great big dude, or Shaquille O'Neal, huge guy. Well, these things are bigger than that, a lot bigger than that. And so it's shocking when you see something that's that big. And so you're afraid at first, but then part of the learning process is you figure out who they are and what they are, and you learn, if they were going to really hurt us, there would be a lot less of us around. And so you kind of start to relax with it and start to have fun with it and enjoy the interaction and try to get them to come visit you and to come hang out with you when you're on an expedition or you're out on your own doing something. And you develop a relationship with them after a while. There's a connectedness that they seem to share amongst themselves. They say what one knows, the others know. If one knows you, all of them know you. But you feel this pull to get to know them more, to be close to them. And even though early on, I didn't even know much about them, and I'd had my one experience, I still felt this pull. I didn't want to live where they didn't exist. And so really happy to fortunately, live in Washington State, Washington, Oregon, the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, all of that is just full of them. There are so many more out there than people realize. They're just so good at being stealthy and elusive, and then that kind of gets you into the idea of, they cloak, so they can be standing in front of you and you won't see them until they move. And then you'll just see a shimmering, kind of like on the movie Predator. Somehow, whoever made that movie, they knew something. And so it's no wonder you don't see them very often, but when you do, it's kind of like a treat. It's like they chose to show themselves, and you should really cherish that kind of a thing. Well, it's always a continual learning experience. If you think you know it all, you're kind of done, because they'll quit showing you new things. If you act like, yeah, I'm the dude, I got all the answers, you're pretty much done, I think. So you always have to have an open heart, an inquisitive mind, wanting to know more, a bit of humility, a lot of humility, actually. And they resonate with that, and they'll keep showing you things. They'll keep teaching you. So the idea is just to keep learning for myself. When people have an encounter, like with me, it's life-altering, it's upsetting, and some of those people need help to get through it. They have PTSD, and just discussing it with somebody who's going to validate what they saw, tell them it's okay, tell them they're not crazy, tell them it's just normal, tell them you don't have to be afraid, get them to think about, they were afraid when it happened, but what actually did that Bigfoot do? Usually it just stood there and looked at you, or you got a fleeting glance as it was leaving. No way to get a picture. Even if you had your phone in your hands or your camera in your hands, you're not fast enough to get that picture, but you get to see it, and that's the real treat. So it's just a continual learning experience and helping those people through this, and making it okay for them. I had one witness early on in my Bigfooting investigating career where he had such an upsetting encounter that he couldn't sleep. It was a year later, and he was still never sleeping the night. He was really upset. His wife was telling him, "You need to get some help." And so he ended up filing a report. I took the report. I followed up on it. And after he had been able to get it off his chest, then life went back to normal for him. And so that's one of the benefits of doing this, is to help people get through it. And then to kind of be a little bit of an ambassador too. You get used to being around them and you're cool with it, you're chill with it. It doesn't bother you. You embrace it. You want them to come and interact with you. I mean, I would love to have one sit, right next to me here, or sit across a fire. That's just generally not how they roll, but they do come and they watch. But as you learn about them from, your investigations, your camping trips, your expeditions, your networking with other people, other investigators, you find out that there's a certain way that they just are. And if you had a group of investigators or Bigfoot enthusiasts from Washington State got together with a group from, say, Georgia, and you sat down and you compared notes on the different aspects of the Bigfoot subject, you'd find out you're learning exactly the same things. We all are learning the same things because they do the same things wherever they are. So that's kind of a cool thing to understand, that they're not different here than other places. They have just a certain way about them. If you have some friends that are Native American or First Nations, if you're in Canada, and they're willing to open up to you about it, they have a wealth of information. That information to a non-tribal person may seem a little strange and almost like legend or myth-like, but it's based in fact. They have a way of interacting with the forest people, is what I like to call them, that is deeper and more personal than a non-tribal person really has an appreciation for. And so if you can get a tribal elder to tell you what's going on with them, or someone who's just very knowledgeable, who's tribal, take that information in, because it's so important, because that's really the crux of who they are. We all start out thinking that we're talking about maybe a caveman or a wood ape or something like that. And the more you do this, the more you find out that there's much more to them. Well, they have language. The Sierra Sounds is an example of that. They have language. Sounds like, people call it samurai chatter, backwards Chinese. They have whistle language. They have bird call languages. They have wood knocking, or however they make the knocking sound. We've never seen them hit a tree with a baseball bat, or a big stick. So we don't know for sure that they're doing it, but that's what we call it because that's what it sounds like. click language, like the African Bushmen have a click language. People are hearing that. So it's not a dumb animal that can do all those things. It's something that's got an intellect. It's something that can plan. We had one night walk where we took a bunch of people to the end of a logging road. There was a turnaround there, and we all sat around, and we were just waiting for something to happen. And the Bigfoots had a plan. One came from the southwest down towards us, another one came from the southeast towards us, and another one came from the northeast up behind us. They had a plan. They figured it out before we got there what they were going to do. Somehow they know this stuff. So they're nothing to be underestimated. They seem to know that you're coming before you get there. We have good interaction with them, not like on-demand interaction, but good interaction on our expeditions, because when we get there, we go introduce ourselves, tell them who we are, tell them what we're there for, that we mean no harm, we show no aggression towards them, we invite them to come visit, and they seem to pick up on that, and more often than not, they'll come. Now, they won't just generally walk right through camp or something like that. We wish they would, but they will, maybe sneak into camp after dark, poke around, look at your stuff. I have a recording of them picking up the things off my cooking table and moving them around, clickety-clank, coffee pot, pick it up, set it down, get up the next morning. You didn't know that they were there, and absolutely nothing is out of place. Everything is exactly where it was. But then listening to the night's recordings, and you hear them doing it. So they're very good at knowing, oh, this cup came from exactly this spot. I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to put it exactly back where it came from. That's not something that's dumb. They have the ability to communicate with us when they want to, if you're open to it. It seems like the women being more intuitively geared, pick up on it quicker than us guys do. Some of us guys are just so dense we never get it. There are some guys that do pick up on it and start to hear them. It's like they project their thoughts into your head. I experienced it once. It was very profound, and it was very direct. And another person standing next to me also heard it, and they told me to put my camera away, which I obediently took it off my walking stick and put it in its pouch. And we just went on about our business. Another time, we were scouting out for an area to have an expedition, and it was, getting dark. We hadn't found any place. I had a witness that lived not too far away. He had a nice big backyard area. And so we called him up. Can we come over? Yeah, sure, come on over. Can we put a tent out in your backyard? We're leaving in the morning. Put the tent out. 3 of us went to sleep in there. Middle of the night, air mattress is going a little bit flat, feeling a rock in my back. I wake up, and suddenly there was like this knowing. They're there. They're right outside the tent. I don't know how they do it. You get the vibe, but you just know they're there. Oh, tried to wake up the person next to me. Hey, they're here. And they just sound asleep. So I just laid back, wide awake. It's dark, it's black dark. And all of a sudden there's this image. It's like right in front of my face of one of their faces. And I went, I know you're doing this. This is really nice. This is cool. I'm really happy with this. And then another image showed up, and then it faded. And then another image. And they showed me 6 individuals, and everyone looked different. Just like with people, they look different. And then they left. And the only thing I can think of is they were introducing who they were, and they wanting to get my reaction. Was I going to be fearful and shocked, or was I going to be happy to see them and get to know them? So that mental slideshow is another way they communicate. Had another friend who gutsy guy, former Green Beret, retired Green Beret. He would wait till all of us came back from a night walk, and then he would take off and he'd do a night walk by himself. And this one particular occasion, a Bigfoot picked him up and was following along the side. He was walking down the road. It was off to the side of the road, staying a little behind him, off to one side, following along. He took this other little windy, twisty road down through the trees, and it followed him. He got to the end of the road where it ended up at a swamp, and he found a place where there was a log laying lengthwise down the road, and he just laid back onto, alongside that log. He had a root sticking him in the back because he did not want to fall asleep. He wanted to stay awake. And he's laying back, and he said it took that Sasquatch 15 minutes to creep up and then sit on the opposite side of the log from him. And he just laid there. And then pretty soon he started getting a mental slideshow. And it was like it was taking him through his life. It was showing him scenes from his life. And it kept going. And then he thought, I need to be a good researcher. I need to note the time. And so he picks up his arm and he looks at his watch, and the Sasquatch goes, Then he noted the time and he put his arms back down and relaxed, and the Sasquatch went, And then the slideshow started up again. And it went on and on and on, and finally it was done. It learned what it needed to know. And so he just got up. He never even looked at it. He turned and walked in the dark back towards camp, and then next morning was able to relate the encounter. Lots of strangeness like that goes on. We've had, the orbs come through people's tents. I remember on my very first expedition, I was told by one of the organizers that watch for the little blue lights, because when the little blue lights are in the forest, Sasquatches are around. And I'm thinking, little blue lights, what's that all about? That was my first introduction to what they call the woo now. The cloaking, the mind speak, the glowing eyes, all of those things, infrasound, all of those things are what they call the woo. And some of the things that were woo way back in 2010 are pretty well accepted. Eye glow, for instance. I remember, people were reporting, I saw eye glow. They were calling it eye shine. It's not eye shine. Eye shine is like when you shine your flashlight in your dog's eyes and you see it reflect, or in a deer's eyes or a cow or whatever. This, you don't have to have any light. The eyes just glow, and it can be white, green, orange, red, and it seems like people see blue, and it's usually associated with the little ones, the babies, the little toddlers, the little kid Sasquatches. But why the difference in colors? We don't know. Is it difference in individuals? Is it a difference in their emotional state? When they're chilled out, is it, green or white? Or if they're angry, is it red? That's just a guess. We don't know for sure, but you see various colors. My first night walk on my first expedition, I got to see eye glow. 2 almond-shaped eyes like this, about that far apart, about 8 feet up, right alongside the trail or the road that we were walking on. And it was just so cool to see that. And then one of the more experienced people there walks up, a gal, and she goes, "Oh, where is it?" And we didn't point, but we said 9 o'clock from us. And she goes, "Okay," and she walked right up to it. It didn't stay there, but I'd never seen anybody have that much guts to just turn and walk into the woods towards it. And so, first expedition, I'm getting the eye glow. And that was, at that time, woo-woo stuff, paranormal stuff, big arguments. I remember back then we had on Yahoo groups. They used to have Yahoo groups, and so we had one for all the investigators. And so we could chatter back and forth about things we were running into. And so there's huge argument about eye glow. You know, it can't be, it's impossible. We had guys with PhD behind their names saying that's not possible, you know. But then you stop and you think, well, let's talk about fish that are down in the deepest ocean where there is no lights. They've got bioluminescence. They got, you know, eye glow. They got little fishy things that they dangle out in front of their mouth to try and get something to come bite it so they can eat them. The squids and the octopuses, they communicate with different colors. Octopuses can virtually disappear. So it's not unheard of. It's just unusual for a terrestrial animal. Another aspect that was hotly debated back then was the idea of infrasound. Now, infrasound is low frequency sound below 20 hertz. A human can't hear it. What people would describe is they would hear maybe a low rumbling growl, and then the tone would decrease until you can't hear it anymore. But you can feel it. It's resonating in your body, and it's making you sick. It's affecting you physically. It's affecting you mentally maybe a little bit. You want to get out of there. You want to leave. You know, they're like warning you away. And we've noticed that, you know, they can give you the vibe, and you don't even know they're around, and you're just suddenly getting this feeling, and you go, I gotta leave. And you turn around and you leave. Well, they achieved what they wanted to achieve. Keep pressing your luck and keep going. They're gonna amp it up a little bit. Oh, now you're getting sick to your stomach. Maybe you're throwing up. If you still don't get the message, they're going to drop you. They can hit one person in a group, or they can hit the whole group. I felt it one time pretty good, electrical shock going right at my back. But I know other people who have been hit multiple times, and it's not pleasant when they really want to take it out on you because you're doing something that they don't approve of in their territory. You're not getting the message. You need to get out of there. So anyway, infrasound, a woo-woo thing. Everybody talks about it now. It's, you know, out in the open. People know it can happen. They can use it, like I said, to warn you away, to all the way to, we're going to hammer you really hard and you're going to hurt. So got to respect that. But it's now an understood, partially understood thing. We still don't know exactly the mechanism by how they do that. But there are other animals out there that do it. Lions do it. Elephants do it. Hippos, crocodiles. So it's not unheard of in the animal world for infrasound to be used. And it can be used like for long distance communication too. Elephants do it. They can talk amongst themselves over miles, you know, through that low frequency sound. Then you get into the, like I've already touched on, the mind speak and the different aspects or ways that they can communicate with that. You know, just like I said before, you'll get their thought right in your head, or you know, you'll hear their voice in your head, but it's in English somehow. Maybe there's some sort of universal translator out there in the universe, you just don't know. Like I said, the slideshows, mental slideshows. There's this paranormal side of it that is also opens up this kind of a spiritual nature that they have to them. And it's like they know you, and it's, you know, you're trying to learn about them, but it opens up a portal, a door to other things out there in the universe that, you know, just the idea of Bigfoot's existing at all. For the general public, that's paranormal. To people that have seen them, they know that they're there, they've seen them, but they maybe at this point, they don't know anything about them. And then as they start to learn about them, they discover there are these other aspects like the cloaking and the mind speak and that kind of thing. And then you get into, well, there's more stuff out there. There's other kinds of beings out there that we don't understand and really don't know what they are, that we've experienced interacting with. We've seen them change from a corporeal form where you can see them into an energy being kind of form, an orb, and take off. We've photographed the orbs at our expeditions from time to time. It's a rare treat, but they're doing that kind of thing. So then now your whole consciousness has to open up. Your worldview was in a box. Now the box is bigger. And pretty soon you start learning enough things that you realize you can't put it in a box. The box has got to be limitless because there's limitless possibilities out there. You know, we humans, we see this little narrow slit of electromagnetic spectrum called the visible spectrum. Well, what's on this side and what's on that side and what's walking around that's in those zones that we can't see? So there's more things out there that you have to consider could exist. People wonder, how do they see so well in the dark? Why do trail cameras not seem to work very much? How do they avoid them? Well, they're seeing things in a way we can't see them. I did an experiment with a psionics night vision scope where I watched a deer trip trail camera that's on our property. We have it on our deer feeder so we can see what deer are coming around, and cougars and other things. But when I watched that IR strobe fire off when it took the photo, it was like the entire forest lit up in just a bright light. And I'm thinking, they have, quote, night vision, natural night vision. They see so well at night. They see better, some people think, at night than we see during the daytime. You know, they pick up on just the slightest things out there in the dark. So if my night vision scope is picking up that trail camera, then I think their eyes can pick it up. So to them, when something trips the trail camera, it's this big bright light, of course you're going to avoid it. Plus, it's something that is foreign to their environment. Let's use this analogy. If you moved into a new neighborhood, or you had new neighbors that moved into your neighborhood and you wanted to get to know them, would you sneak over there and put a trail camera in their living room so that you could photograph them and find out who they are? No, you wouldn't. You'd walk out there over there with the cookies or lasagna or something nice, a nice offering to them, to be friends and, be up front with it. You wouldn't be trying to hide cameras around. So when we go into their territory, their forest is their home, it's their living room, and we put up a trail camera, it's going to be something that's foreign to them. They're going to spot it in a heartbeat. Just like if somebody snuck into your living room and put a trail camera in the corner of your living room, you would pick up on it as soon as you walked in there. You'd go, something's different. Oh, what's that there? And you're going to avoid it, and you're probably going to go over there and you're going to smash it, and you're going to wait for them to come try and claim it, whoever's it was, and then you're going to give them what for doing it. So it's not a good way of getting to know your neighbors. They don't seem to mind audio recorders. Sometimes they might even pick them up and carry them off, and then they get bored with them and they drop them on the ground, or they see a squirrel, they see something that takes their attention away from that little device, they'll drop it on the ground. They they don't seem to mind them. But something with a camera lens, they just, it must freak them out some way. But it seems like a thermal camera. It emits no radiation of any kind. It doesn't emit, an IR signal that is looking for the beam to be broken so it can take the picture. It doesn't do any of that. It's all passive. Thermal cameras work pretty well. If they're around, you can get them in a thermal camera. You can get them with a good night vision scope, good expensive military grade night vision scope. You can see them that way. But even with that, they still keep cover between you and them. There'll be a bush there. They'll peek around a tree, and you've seen this on some of the TV shows where they're using some of that kind of tech. They peek around the tree. They're not just generally standing out in the open, and so that's just the way they roll. It's instinctive to them to keep cover between you and them. If you walk into their territory and for some reason surprise them, which doesn't often happen, they're usually knowing you're there before you even have any idea that they're around. But if you surprise one, their first option is just to squat to the ground and freeze, or go flat on the ground and freeze. And most of the time, if we don't see them move, we'll never see them. As long as they're fixed in place, our eyes are tuned to catch movement. If it doesn't move, we don't see it. A lot of other animals are that way too. An elk hunter knows that. You can be right out in the open with your bow, and as long as you freeze and don't move, the elk will walk right in front of you. But as soon as you move, just a twitch, you're busted and they're gone. So we don't see them. They're there, but we don't see them. So there can be a lot of them around. They can be around. You can be around them, and you'll never know. You'll never know. People talk about the smell. It seems like it's the ones that smell really bad are the males. It's a very acrid, pungent, sharp smell, like it hits your nose kind of like a whiff of ammonia, but it's like BO, urine, burning baby diapers, that kind of thing. It's really rank. Once you get a nose of that, you'll never forget it. When they're close enough for you to smell them, you might look around and you won't see a thing, but they're closer than you think because of that. But it's funny, they don't always smell. It's like it's something they can turn on and off, maybe like a skunk. Some people have said maybe they got glands or something like that they can excrete that. But on the other hand, the females have figured out how to smell nice. We can tell when we're out on a night walk if we're being followed by a female or a male, because the female will smell like cinnamon, patchouli, vanilla, fresh baked donuts. So it's just nice. It's just nice and warm and maybe flowery. It's really nice. And then when the males come around, if they're following you or they're close by, it's really different. And so you can really tell the difference. So the females, they're girls, they figured out how to smell nice. We're more like them, or they're more like us than people realize. When you see lately, all the rage has been these AI renditions of a Bigfoot. They got this new one now, the Bigfoot vlog. They're hilarious. But they always give it a gorilla face. And they don't look like a gorilla. They look like a person. The witnesses report, like two friends of mine, they were elk hunting just up the road from where we're at right now in Packwood. driving up to go elk hunting early in the morning. They see something black walking along the road opposite direction from them on the right-hand side. And it's one of those situations every driver's faced. You can't tell what's there, but you know something's there. And so you're kind of a little bit on guard. Maybe your peripheral vision is picking up or something, but you know something's there, but you can't really tell. Well, as they got closer to it, they realized it was an upright bipedal figure, but it looked like just a normal human person, except for it was all hairy. And as they drove by in a jacked up four-wheel drive, it was taller than the cab of their pickup truck. And so they both turned around to look. It's a wonder they didn't drive off the road, but they turned around to look, and as it passed by, or as they passed by it, it crossed the road behind them and down off into the dark. But it looked like one of us. It didn't look like a gorilla. There are some that people describe as looking more gorilla-like, maybe having black skin instead of pale skin or gray skin or brown skin. You know, they're like people. They're all different. So it's almost like there's more than one kind of thing out there, but they don't look like a gorilla. Like I said, people report two different descriptions, and maybe there are two different beings out there that are conflated as being Bigfoots, Sasquatches. You know, how would they know the difference? Because they look alike, but people do report differences, but they don't look like your AI-generated gorilla face creature. They just look like one of us because they actually are like one of us. They're just superbly adapted to their environment, which is the natural world. You know, don't need fire, don't generally need tools, although I did one time find the rock that they'd been hitting a tree with. I'm pretty sure that that's what they had done with it. But they're just natural. They're the most naturally adapted being out there that's would be, you know, you could consider a human. You know, we're all dependent on our technology. You know, we've lost that connection with the natural world that even, you know, people like the Aborigines in Australia, they're still connected that way, most of them. Native American people here, tribal people, First Nations, they're still more connected than your average person. People that live in rural areas, you know, where they got their chickens and they got their geese and they got their cows and their sheep and their goats, and, you know, they're growing their own food, and they're you know, got their own water, doesn't have fluoride in it. You know, they're more connected with their environment than the average like city person is. So they pick up on their forest neighbors. But the Bigfoots, like I said, the most connected to the natural environment of any humanoid type creature on the planet. But they're connected in a similar analogous way to the way whales are connected to the ocean. Whales have a big brain. Dolphins have a big brain. Sasquatches are big, and they got a big brain. It's bigger than our brain. What do they do with that? You know, they use it. Just because they don't need technology and all that doesn't make them inferior to us. We're maybe superior with technology, but what has that really gained us other than we have these cool tools like computers and cars and airplanes and all that stuff that help us live life, you know, refrigerators and all that helps us live our life. But you take that away from us, and what are we? We're going to be dead pretty soon. You know, we're just not going to survive in the natural world without that. So you know, we're kind of stuck with that. But they're still in the world where all of us could go away, all of our technology could go away and they're just fine. They're just fine. Some people say, oh, they're an endangered species. Well, how do you know that? How do you know how many there are? You can't count them. They won't stand still and let you count them. So there's no way to know. But I will say that based on how many people see them, like here in this town, Packwood, kind of like it's not the center of Bigfoot in the Bigfoot world, but it's right in the middle of a huge area that they're here all the time. People are seeing them every day. I bet most of the people in this town, if you got them one-on-one and said, what have you seen? They'll all have seen something. They'll have heard something, seen one, experienced something having to do with them. It's just completely common around here. So based on that, there's got to be a lot of them around here. I've heard it argued there can't be more than 75 individuals in Washington State, and I'm thinking, that wouldn't even be a viable breeding population. They couldn't find each other. They would be so inbred that their species would be on the decline to oblivion. So there's a lot of them. There's a lot more than people think. How many are there? We don't know. We can't count them. Like I said, they won't stand still and fill out a census form or something like that. But they're far more numerous than people realize. They're doing just fine. There's lots of little kid ones out there that will play around. You can go to various lakes and reservoirs where their cycle is they drain the reservoir, and then the snow melts, it fills it back up, and then they use that water for irrigation and keeping the water for the salmon and the steelhead and the trout. Maybe a little bit of using it for hydroelectric purposes and all that. But over the summer, it drains down so that it's low for the fall rains and then the snow when it gets ready to melt. So you go out there on those mud flats of a reservoir that's fairly well emptied, and you're going to find little baby barefoot footprints. It's like they take their kids and they let their kid Bigfoots play around out there. And if you look at what they're doing, they're digging holes, they're looking for crayfish, they're looking for freshwater clams and bugs and that kind of stuff. But because they're human sized, most people that see them just blow them off as like, well, that's just little kids. But if you look at what they're doing, they're not doing things that kids do. They're doing things that little Bigfoots do. We found those footprints in March when we had to wade through 2 feet of snow for a mile to be able to get to the lake. And where the creeks are running, the snow's gone, so it's just mud. There's fresh little footprints in there. What human mother is going to let their 7-year-old run around barefoot in the snow in that kind of weather and play like that? It's just not going to happen. It's not the way people roll. So by the context, that says that's got to be little Bigfoots. We've also noticed in one particular place, there's one particular track that's a little bit bigger than the rest, but it's really unique. It's long, it's skinny, but it's got a great big toe. And we were noticing it, me and Dave Ellis and some of the others that were, going up in the end of October and finding all these tracks cast. And we were noticing it, and we would see it every year. Well, then we started to talk to other groups that would go up to this same lake. And we'd say, hey, have you ever seen Skinnyfoot? And they go, oh, yeah, we've seen that track. Everybody knows that track that goes up there and looks for that kind of stuff. So we considered that one to be the babysitter. Maybe if it's a she, maybe 10, 12 years old, taking the 5 and 6-year-olds out to let them play, keep an eye on them. Maybe mom and dad are back in the tree line, not leaving big tracks out where you can find them. And, they play all night, starts to get light. Hey, come on, kids, let's go back to where we go. Now the lake's going to be let the humans play around there. But yeah, there's lots of them. There's tracks all over the place. There's one cool find a few years ago was some friends of ours were out at the same lake, and they find this big hole, and it's probably 3 feet in diameter, 4 feet maybe, a couple of feet deep. And they start looking at this big hole, and there's a butt print about this wide, right in the edge of it. And then they said, yeah, we found this other butt print over here that was, like this big, a little kid. And so they showed me the pictures so I could understand the context. And I said, well, did you see that butt print over there with a big footprint in it? No, they didn't see it, so they stepped in it. But they were able to cast that. And it's real similar to the skookum cast, if you're familiar with that. A Bigfoot that was laying kind of in a mud puddle trying to get the apples that were used as bait. And so the casting is like 4 feet by 4 feet. Former co-worker Rick Knoll was there, and because he worked at the Boeing Plaster and Plastics model shop, he knew exactly how to make that casting so that it would not fall apart because it was going to be so big and heavy. Never would have got it without him being there. I've seen that one firsthand. So this one that these people found, very similar. You can see the texture of the skin on the back of the legs. It was a female. You can see various anatomy parts, but nice, big, 30 inches across. Big gal. And so, they're down there, at night doing what they do, playing around. I can just picture it like me and my brothers when we were little. We dug a big mud hole like that. We filled it full of dirt and mud, and we were diving in and making a big mess of ourselves. Well, I can see little Bigfoots kind of doing a similar kind of thing, and it looked like they were having a good time. But, great find, there's, you got all this. They say, well, there's no evidence. You hear people say that, flippantly say, oh, there's no evidence of Bigfoot. And it's like, I guess you've never got off your butt and gone out there and looked, because, well, you got your Patterson-Gimlin film, and that's never been debunked. Matter of fact, the more technology they throw at that film, including photogrammetry, creating a 3D model from it, which Bill Munns did, that shows it to be real. Other aspects, like if they took, what most people see is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and it gets washed out, data lost the more copies you make. So if you take like 10 copies and you overlay them, any errors get washed out. So you get a nice and sharp copy. So, you can do that, kind of restore it, analyze it. People have done that. That's as real as it gets. And there's even things like people miss, like, hey, she has a ponytail. It's tied back. And if somebody doesn't clue you in to look for that, you just miss it. And it's like, well, it's not some dumb wood ape that can tie its hair back in a ponytail. It's a person that could do that. So you got that evidence. You got, like I said, the skookum cast. You take one look at that. There are people who have tried to say, oh, well, that was just an elk. Nope, I'm an elk hunter. I know what elk anatomy looks like. There's no part of that that's an elk. What you got there is a hip, a butt, an arm, and you can see the hair from its arm. You can see where its fingers were. You can see where its heel was. That was a Bigfoot. This butt cast, similar kind of thing. So there's tons of evidence for them really existing. So I don't even know these days why it's a question. I think maybe it's a question because some people just don't want it to be real. Their life paradigm is this little box, of our modern world, when, like I said before, the box has got to be bigger. Why don't we have a body? Well, first thing is a dead body in the forest gets taken apart pretty quickly. The the flies get at it. You got your maggots, start to disassemble it. You got your bears are going to come in and start eating on it. You got your coyotes, your foxes, your birds, your ravens, the vultures, that kind of thing. They're going to start picking it apart pretty soon. The skeleton gets all disarticulated and the bones just get scattered around. You know, maybe a coyote will pick up a femur bone and run off with it. So any kind of animal, whether it's a human or a deer or an elk or a bear, is pretty much scattered around. Now, as a hunter, we've run across skulls, from an elk or a deer and that kind of thing. You very seldom run across a whole animal. Now, if you take and you look at, okay, this is kind of a person, not an ape. It's a person who has a family, who cares for their husband, cares for the wife, they care for their kids, they care for their grandma, their grandpa, their cousins. So one dies. What are they going to do? They're going to treat it with the same respect that humans have done for millions of years. You have a ritual, you bury them, you hide them. Autumn Williams wrote a book called Enoch, and it's about a Bigfoot, a skunk ape down in Florida who befriended this guy who spent a lot of time out in the woods because, he's just having trouble with life. And they allowed him to go with them to the annual rendezvous, the meeting that all the skunk apes had. And at that time, he got to witness the burial of a stillborn. And they let the mom hold it, mourn for it for a day or so, and then they gently came and took it from her. They prepared a big hole. They put the baby in the hole, but then they planted a tree on top of that grave. So now this tree is going to grow up. Who's going to find it? So if they are burying their dead, maybe making a big cairn of rocks on top of the grave, and we're talking boulders that might weigh 500 pounds apiece. People are just not going to run into that. They're not going to find it. They would be really good at hiding it. So naturally, we're not going to have a body. So there's lots of reasons for not having a body. So you get a lot of reports that are, I saw a Bigfoot cross the road. Okay, those are cool. You figure out where it was, what happened. You don't get a lot of information from it. Maybe what direction was it going? Sometimes that's significant, sometimes not, depending on the time of year. You learn a little bit. But the really significant ones, the ones where we learn the most, is from the habituation reports. An habituation report is, and maybe habituation isn't the best term to use, but that's what everybody uses, so we'll use it. It's where people are living in an area where they have Bigfoots for neighbors. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them, forest people. And over time, they realize, the people that live there realize something is strange going on. There's certain strangeness happening, like maybe they're finding their freezer that's on their back porch open, and they know it was closed the night before, and there's maybe something missing. One site that I worked, one of the questions I always ask if they're having that kind of a situation is, do you have a refrigerator or freezer that's accessible from outside? And she said, yeah, we got one in the barn. I keep the medicine for the horses in there and some carrots and stuff, and the carrots keep disappearing. So they realize something is going on. And then maybe they'll put in a report, and they want somebody to, because maybe they're getting a suspicion that it might be a Bigfoot. And so they file a report. We go out there, we talk to them, find out what's going on, survey the property, get them to tell us what experiences they've had. And usually I can find, well, here's a little spot over here where they can hide in the bushes and they can watch in your kitchen window and watch what you're doing. And over here, oh, here's another spot where they can hide in the bushes and they can watch your TV. So they're having this interaction that's going on. And they're just being natural kind of with each other. And so what you learn from this is how they really behave, how stealthy they can be while they're watching you, but they love to watch you, but they don't want to necessarily be seen while they're doing it. You learn more about their behavior, so that becomes very significant. One site is not as active as it used to be. The family left, but these people had been interacting with this one family of Sasquatch for over 20 years. And they got to know them, and they would call the male Smokey because he was gray and he was 9 feet tall. And they would call the female Thule, short for patchouli, because she smelled nice and she was blonde and she had this beautiful hair that most women would give anything to have hair like that. And then they had 2 little kids, and then there was a third one that came along. And they got used to interacting with each other. The woman would go out and she would cut trails on their property. They had 15 acres of property. And they would cut trails, and the Bigfoots would kind of follow along and keep an eye on her. But their dogs didn't like it, so the Bigfoots would give the dogs a whooping. And all 3 of them got beat up pretty bad. At one time they had a little pit bull mix, and it went charging off into the brush to try to protect its master, and the Bigfoot picked it up, chucked it like a football right back at him, and the dog landed thud, and well, he was mad, so he goes charging back in there, and the Bigfoot picked it up and threw it just a little bit further, and the dog had enough and he headed for home. Sometimes the dogs would stand in front of her to keep her from going any further. They were trying to protect her. Later, over time, those 3 dogs got old and they died. After recovering from their injuries, they ended up, like old dogs. They ended up at the end of their life. So they got a new dog. Now, these Bigfoots knew this dog as a puppy. And because they knew it as a puppy, it was cool with them. And so in the mornings, oftentimes, they'd let the dog out to do its business, and it'd go out and it'd disappear for a couple hours, and it would come back just stinking of Bigfoot. But it was happy as can be. And so they had this really cool relationship going on, which taught us it's not dogs that is the problem, it's the nature of the dog. And it's that way with people. We're afraid of a dog that is very aggressive. But you can always tell by a dog's body language that, yeah, it's a cool dog. I can go over there and I can pet that dog, and it's going to wag its tail and be nice to me. So we learned that it's the nature of the dog. And so we've learned that. We've learned, they do stuff like come in and steal animal food. They like cob. So they'll come in and they'll take the animal food. They might take a chicken. They might take a duck. One site, they would take any turkey that they could get a hold of. So the turkeys learned to roost in the middle of the pen where they were out of arm's reach, even though the Bigfoot, if it wanted to step in, could have. It just somehow respected that fence line, and it would only grab something it could reach. Then people would, this one site, they got the idea, well, we'll feed them. We'll take our leftovers, we'll put them in a bowl, we'll cover it with saran wrap, and we have this box. It was a box on wheels that had an opening in it so their goats had a place to get out of the rain. And so they'd set it on top of that, and then they put a milk crate, a plastic milk crate on top. So whatever's going to take that food had to have enough sense to pick the milk crate up and then pull the saran wrap back, eat the food, and then it would put the saran wrap back and put the milk crate back on top. And what it would do also is they would leave a gift. And this one time they left a gift of some poor blue jay got its tail feathers yanked out and set very neatly and artfully and symmetrical on their picnic table with a rock right over the end of it. And when you look at it, you go, oh my gosh, that's art. You know, it's rudimentary, but it's art. They would leave stuff like that for them. You know, you give them something, they give you something, gifting. That's a relationship you're having now with these beings. And it was all cool. I mean, these people, they decided, we're going to get a swimming pool. So they bought one of those above ground swimming pools that's about 4 feet deep, 15 feet across. It's got a electric water pump, a little ladder goes in and out, and a filter. Well, they put it all up, they filled it with water, going to use it the next day. They go out there the next day, and the surface is covered with an oily sheen, grass, bugs, there's mud on the bottom, there's little footprints in there, and they're going, dang Sasquatches were using our pool all night long. So they clean the pool out, they clean the filter out, and the next day, same thing. These people never got to use their pool. The Sasquatches use that pool every day throughout the summer, and we think that mama had a baby in the pool. You know, the water births is kind of a thing with some people. My oldest granddaughter was a water birth. In a pool of water, she was born. So we think the same thing happened because there was blood in the water. And then this little baby appears, you know, that they hadn't seen before. So that was kind of cool. But we got a nice wad of hair out of there that was, you know, untouched by human hands, and I still have that. Cindy Dosen has done an analysis on it, and it's a humanoid hair. It's not never been cut. It's perfectly natural. And so, you know, that tells you, well, that was one of them. So yeah, those are the kind of reports where you learn the most. But it's a long-term process. It's not meet them one time, get an interview, you know, write it up, move on. It's a relationship that you build with these people over time. But again, those are the most significant ones because those are where you learn the most. You know, I would just say, you know, it's been said if you want to see one, you have to believe first. And if you believe that they're there, you can see them. They'll let you see them from time to time. If you don't believe they're there, then your mind is closed off to it. You're never going to see them. The other thing I would say is an interaction with a Bigfoot is kind of a door opening. It's a door for your mind to walk through, to realize there's more out there in the world that you don't understand than you thought. It opens up other aspects. So you learn about Bigfoots, and you think, oh, I got it. You know, I know Bigfoot exists because I saw one. But if you keep pursuing it, if it becomes a passion, you realize there's so much more to them. And so that door gets wider, that box you put your world into gets bigger and bigger, and pretty soon you say, the heck with it. My box doesn't exist anymore. And now you're understanding, oh, hey, there's things like orbs out there. There's things like portals out there. Well, that doesn't make the UFOs now so far-fetched. And the idea that there's other kinds of beings out there, you find out that there's these energy beings. And then you think, well, when you really, you know, you look at us, you know, okay, I can feel that, you know, I'm solid, I feel like I'm solid. But when you really analyze it at a molecular level, at atomic level, you're mainly empty space. So there's a lot more to this world than we thought. And understanding it is, like I said, going through an open door to a bigger world. And I think there's an awakening with humanity because of this. And maybe that's part of why people are seeing the Bigfoots more often than in the past, is to get our attention so that we come up to a higher level of a entity, so to speak.